Oh, I just realized the bear that's kind of underneath the thing. It looks kind of menacing. Let me know if he moves or something, I guess. How's it going, guys? I'm Danny, and for this video, I'm kind of going back to the roots of my channel and just doing instructional content for disc golf. And I wanted to not remake some of my older videos, but basically kind of remake some of my older videos with a little bit better quality, maybe elaborate on a few things, and I've learned a lot since then, so I can improve on them as well. So I wanted to go back and restart some of the first videos that I've made on disc golf form on my channel. So I've actually got it pulled up right here. I don't know how many of these videos are actually unlisted, but we have some really old throws of mine, and we got some super old in the bags with awful lighting. And then this is kind of the first real form help video that I made. This one is great because it has my... we don't really need to hear the audio, but it's got my dog in the background. He's paying attention. But anyway, my idea behind making these two videos in particular was I was going to make one video on mechanics and the other one on timing, and I was going to basically prescribe, I guess, those videos to people specifically so that they can, so if they need to work on mechanics, they can work on mechanics, and if they need to work on timings, they can work on timings. And that didn't really work out that well, because it turns out people are very different, and you can't just do stuff like that. But these videos have gotten, this one's gotten a lot of views, but I don't really know why. It's kind of terrible. The audio is all messed up because there's leaves in the ground. But the first video that I made that was more in my, when I started making weekly content, there was this video here. It's on footwork. And this pink hoodie, fun fact, this was 3 years ago. I still have that pink hoodie. When I first started wearing this hoodie, I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna be the pink hoodie guy. I'm just gonna wear a pink hoodie in every single one of my videos. That'll be great. No, it won't. That was a stupid idea. I'm very glad I didn't wear it past the first two videos. But let's check out this first video. What's up, guys? I'm Danny, and this is everything you need to know about disc golf footwork. Correct disc golf footwork breaks down to 3 steps. Lots of people do a bigger run-up, but the last 3 steps are always the same. I was a big fan of text on the screen. The setup, the X step, and the brace. Now, throughout this video, I'm going to be talking about the line. The line I'm referring to is the line from the peak of the reach back through the release of the disc onto the target. It's a straight line, and I'm imagining that projected straight on the floor. So I've kind of learned since then that that line actually kind of branches out from your chest as you move to the release point. The disc kind of goes straight from your reach back and then out to the release point for most backhand throws, and that just lets you get a little bit more leverage on it. But overall, what I'm talking about is the line that you're approaching on the tee pad, on the ground, not necessarily the one that you're pulling disc on. So that's something I've learned. That's cool. Now, for most of disc golf footwork, my toes are on that line, and this keeps the weight on my toes, and this keeps myself in an athletic position, except for the last step. Now, during the last step, I plant my heel on that line. But I'm going to talk about that line several times. That's the line I'm talking about. Straight from... Okay, this video is bad. I'm already bored. Why am I still rambling about this stuff? Okay, so a better way to describe what I'm trying to talk about in this video is turning around backwards when you're throwing. A lot of people tend to carry a lot of speed into their throw, and they spin around backwards while they're X-stepping to kind of keep running and keep up that momentum. But turning around backwards is very ineffective to throwing something forwards. Think about if you were a pitcher and you spun all the way around and looked at second base before trying to turn around and throw the ball at the catcher, the baseball thing. That's not going to be very effective at pitching. Yes, you do lift up your leg and you kind of rotate your shoulders back, but you're not spinning. Your foot is never turning all the way around. And it's kind of the same thing for disc golf. You never want to turn your whole body away from the target. Now, the way that I taught this in the first video was to keep your feet perfectly sideways in your X step, but that isn't always the case, because some people aren't as flexible and they can't keep their feet perfectly sideways in their X step, and the feet aren't really what's necessary to keep you sideways to the target. It's your hips. You want to keep your hips mostly lined up as you're coming into your X step and as you're taking that step. And another thing that I mentioned at the beginning of this video was that you keep your toes on that line. That's mostly correct, but generally your X step toe is going to be a little bit farther back. And so I think focusing on that isn't exactly helpful. It's a better idea to think of walking sideways at the target and keeping yourself lined up until that last step. Now, when I move on to talking about the last step, I want to hear what I say here. When I do that last step, it turns them back, and they 5 degrees, 30 degrees. That's what I'm talking about. See right here, this is that last step is when the hips should turn away from the target. So what this does is if you turn around backwards in your X step, then as you plant your front foot, it's going to be pointed forwards, and then you don't have any range of motion, and you're not balanced properly, and you're just not going to be able to rotate and throw very effectively. But if you stay sideways through the X step, then your hips can rotate back as you reach back. So your hips and your shoulders go in one motion. And that, I think, is the key to syncing up the upper body and the lower body. Lots of people talk about, how do I do this? How do I sync up my upper body and my lower body? I feel like everything's out of whack. Well, it's probably because your lower body is turning and rotating back in your X step, and your upper body is turning and rotating back in your last step. You want them both to happen at that last step. So as you reach back is when you want your hips to turn. You can't let them turn before then if you want them to power the shot and to plant your front foot effectively. What I talk about is setting the front foot down on the toe. This is very important because if your hips are rotated backwards, like they should be, like Will's are here, like Paul's are here, that's going to force you to set your foot down on your toe. If your hips were sideways or slightly open towards the target, that's just going to force your heel down first. And that's actually another really common thing to see, is setting that heel down first, and that means that you might be rotating on your heel, but you're still, that's a sign that your hips aren't rotating correctly and you're not able to brace properly. And continuing on with talking about the front foot, how you want to put it down on the ball of your foot, another thing that's really important that I didn't really mention is the size of that last step. Size of that last step is very important because you want to be able to rotate efficiently. If your feet are spread too far apart, just like if your hips are opened up or something like that, then you're not going to be able to rotate, and you're not going to be able to get much power on the shot. So the thing that I always look for is, if you're taking too big of a step, is you're going too fast. You actually have to put your foot down that far in front of you to catch yourself, to catch your weight. Otherwise, you'll just keep going and crash forwards and probably trip and fall, and it'd be hilarious, but you're not going to be very effective at throwing the disc. A good example of great front foot placement, that's harder to say than you'd think, is Drew Gibson. Here you can see one thing that I try to look for is mostly a straight line. Maybe not a line, but he's very centered over his front leg here. A lot of the more amateur form checks that I see will have a much bigger step, and this angle between like his shoulder and his hip will be a lot bigger. Seabass22 talks a lot about this, and I'll link one of his drills that I think helps with this a lot, the one leg drill. It teaches you how to keep this angle as straight as possible. So if I were to make that video again, the first thing that I would talk about would be pace. I would say slow down. Don't go so fast because it's going to cause a lot of problems down the line. That's the root cause of a big X step where your feet turns backwards. It's the root cause of taking too big of a last step, and it's a root cause of a lot of other form issues just from going too fast. In general, your throw shouldn't be much faster than walking. It should be just a nice controlled step that you're taking. It shouldn't be this big yeet. So that's the first thing that I would teach, is to slow down. The second thing I would teach is to keep your weight over your toes in your X step. And my favorite drill to teach this is to keep your off heel off the ground. So for me, that's my left heel because I'm right-handed. But if you're left-handed, you would want to keep your right heel off the ground. Not as like a permanent way to throw. I don't think that's something to teach somebody to implement on the course. But as a drill, to teach yourself to keep your hips from turning backwards, to keep your off heel off the ground. What that does is it forces you to keep your hips sideways, because if your hips turn backwards, the first thing that's going to happen is your heel's going to set on the ground. So I think that's really important to try and keep your off heel off the ground if you're struggling with turning around early. Next thing I would teach is that front step. You want to try and set your foot down on the ball of your foot without taking too big of a step so that you can rotate. Now, if your off heel is off the ground, for me, my left heel is off the ground, that's going to naturally push into my brace. I don't want to be putting this Herculean effort off of my left foot to try and spin as fast as possible to throw the disc, because any time in disc golf that you're trying to put a massive effort into something, so that is my updated take on disc golf footwork. Take it slow, keep your hips sideways until you reach back, plant your front foot on the ball of your foot, and don't take so big of a step that you can't rotate efficiently to throw the disc. Now, as kind of a thing, I wanted to go back, a blast from the past. I wanted to go back and review some of my old form checks. So, not form checks, some of my old form videos that are on my channel. So this is from 2014. I'd been playing disc golf maybe a year, not quite a year, I don't think. This was in Jonesboro, Arkansas. This is at Craighead Park. I don't even know what hole this is, if I'm being honest. This is it's a Star T-Bird, I think. But here is what I'm talking about, where you turn backwards. What am I, like, my whole body is facing backwards at this point. It's not going to be very effective at throwing the disc forwards if I'm facing backwards. So you saw how, like, I took this big X step. The X step isn't even really a step. It's more like a skip. So you see a lot of people like Miles Seaborn or someone like, what's his name? Devin Owens. That's it. They kind of do more of a crow hop. Or Steve Brinster. They do kind of a crow hop instead of a dedicated X step. I think that would be, I don't think people should jump to X step. I also think that's another really big issue. But in general, your X step shouldn't be this big step. It should be just kind of a little shuffle step as you're kind of going forward. But this is an example of what not to do. And then as I'm going forward, you see how my hips have already rotated? Right? As I'm supposed to be throwing, my hips should be turned backwards now so that they can rotate forward with my shoulders. Now my hips have rotated forward as my shoulders go back. And then a little bit of rounding, not too bad though. But you can see here how there's a nice, I'm going too fast. I have too big of an angle here between my, I guess it's technically my spine and my leg here. That I'm not able to rotate very efficiently. The cargo shorts too, man, the 2014 is strong. I don't know what hole this is. If you're from Jonesboro and you've played Craighead in 2014, let me know what hole this is, because I absolutely parked this shot. I guess, yeah, that's it for this video. I'm going to go through some of the other ones. I'm going to talk about how to time the upper body, talk about some of the other videos that I've made, and sort of improve on them and kind of explain them in a different way, and hopefully you guys like this video. Let me know if you did. As always, I'm going to be on Twitch, twitch.tv/DannyDisc. I've got the next discussion recorded, but the next discussion, like the longer form kind of podcasty video, is going to be on physics of flight. As soon as that's done, it's going to be kind of talking about the reason that I did some experiments a certain way and different stuff like that. So if you have thoughts about that, make sure you tune into that stream. I'll try to post about it here in YouTube, but if you jump in the Discord, that's linked in the description. That's going to be the best way to get notified of when the next discussion live stream is. Regardless, thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time, and always remember, slow is smooth and smooth is far.